Shake here, back with a Ace Tanker replay. This time I'm actually playing as a bottom tier light tank here in the Vk2801 with the 105mm howitzer in a tier 8 game on Redshire. And I will absolutely start out as not the now common sniping light tank. I'm actually going to take a fairly aggressive spotting position. You should know this if you play lights very much, that if you start on the north spawn, you should be trying to find your way either to a couple of the bushes on some of the ridges or this line of bushes here. This is somewhat aggressive, somewhat safe, and if you position yourself far enough back, here especially with no tier 8 lights that would be running CVS, as you can see here, if this was tier 8, I would have gotten spotted by CVS. And the MT25, of course, being tier 6, doesn't have access to that. So this is something you can do that you might get away with in tier 6 and 7 and not in tier 8 necessarily, unless you're in ELC even 90. But I am spotting enemies as they try to poke over the ridge, which keeps them backed off. And that's actually pretty good, even though I don't have much support. But them getting spotted will make them very tentative. And that's going to be good because this team did not deploy very well. You see an extremely heavy bias towards the east. I only have a couple people backing me up along the ridge line, and then we only have 2 mediums that went west. If the enemy team had capitalized at all, this game would be well and truly in a horrible spot very quickly. But as you can see, every time they get spotted, the enemies keep falling back. They're playing safe, but if they had just pushed through, they could have. All it would have taken is for them to realize, oh, all of these enemies are over here spotted in the east. So that means there's only a few covering the whole entire rest of the map, which is not good. But hey, in this case, it works out for my team because the enemy team, who would have an advantage, basically stalls out for too long. You see me here, very tempted to fire. And I do. That was a perfect chance to take basically half the health of the enemy light tank. And now I has been set up to run away. That was worth it though. Even if I took a hit, I thought for sure I was going to take at least one hit from the E25, but he does not fire at me. However, I will not be able to go back to that position. That's one of those things that you can pull off once, but it's over. Because the E25 or the MT25 or even that T78 that was on the back side of the mid-ridge, they would spot me trying to get back to those bushes. And I considered going right up here to the middle ridge, but no. I would probably get spotted on the way in. And instead, something that a lot of players don't take into account is, instead of grouping up all your firepower in one place, it's better to actually position to where you have at least some sort of a crossfire. As you can see here, I'm actually way back. It looks like I'm now portraying the sniping light tank, but I have the P43 Tur on the backside of the middle ridge. And there is the buggy over here to the far west. I think he's overextended at this point. Not that he could bail. He's probably foregone. And whatever he can do is just going to help the team before he goes down. But I'm mainly considering staying over here to help my allied P43 Tur. Because he, on the ridge, he can actually work that ridge line decently well. And then I can cover and spot enemies that are trying to push him when I get a chance. Now remember, I am in the VK2801-105. I have to be very careful with my shots. Very low velocity, hits hard, and yes, I am firing heat at this point, with the game not on the line, but we're actually behind. And I'm firing against targets that it's needed for. This is a tank where proper ammo selection definitely comes into play. There are times where HE is by far better, sometimes where the AP is even more than good enough. And you got to be ready to select whatever ammo works at the time. And right now, it's going to be heat against every target that's being possible to show up. Like this KV-85. There was a killing shot. You know, it's well under the damage of this gun. But even this Type 58, the heat will go through his hull easily. Whereas AP might, or it might ricochet off of, you know, the all-around angled armor of it. What's basically a T-3485. And HE might have finished him off. Here, this would have been an HE shot. But you fire what's loaded. I didn't need to use the heat in that case, but I also didn't want to swap and miss on the chance to finish off the KB2R. And now, I'm actually looking to kind of move in on the enemy E25, their P43 turret that's maybe still hanging around. And on the P43, unless I get the backside, heat's going to be the go-to for that. And here I'm looking at the map, and I run smack dab into a house. That's not destructible. And you see, once the P43 turret went down, I swap over to AG. So I remember the E25 was damaged. I didn't remember exactly how much at this point. And then that T78 is basically a chaffee. So HE is the right choice, so I'll go ahead and load that. And then I'm going to work into the middle here. E25's down, which is nice. That's basically the stealthiest enemy left. And remember, the VK, while it's a light tank, it's not necessarily the stealthiest nor the best spotter, but it is capable of doing so. So far, you see, I've gotten what would be an okay game, but nothing really to be worthy of making a video. It all comes down here. What is crunch time, really? This point here, our team has now gotten control of the map for the most part, but you know the typical spots. You got a couple people still here in the middle, and you know you're going to have on the fringe of the map, to the southwestern corner, there's going to be a tank destroyer or two, and one of those two is an SU-130, and that is bad news for everybody. I can spot him, possibly, and root him out. The Soma, our M2Y, our AT-15, and our AKV, they're not going to be able to do that. This is a game where it's close, and the last light tank left alive is probably going to win the game. And there goes the MT-25. Now, I need to stay alive. I am one-shottable for the SU. So it is a game of cat and mouse between primarily myself and him. I accidentally had blocked what would have been the previous killing shot, unintentional, but I spotted the MT, and then my turret got hit by the friendly IKV-90B. But now what I'm looking at is, I know the SU is going to be all the way in the back, but the T-78's probably still there, and he could light me as I try to get into a bush. And there is a Hellcat in play, along with artillery. So it could be very simple. Even if I survive a hit from the SU, it could be as simple as get finished off by the Hellcat. And sure enough, T-78 was right there still. And I did happen to spot the SU as he was pulling forward, it looks like. I'm just flinging shots. I'm not trying to really score any accurate hits, because there's why. Maneuvering is far more important. Now that's pretty much game. I'm going to look to try to get some more damage, because I've had a very good game now. It went from a pretty good game to, hey, this could be ace. So let me spot the last two enemies and try to get a shot in. And the Hellcat, he snapped off a good shot. And I don't quite get the shot off before I back into cover. Now keep note of my health. Hellcat's gun does 240 average damage. Look what I have. Just enough to survive if he doesn't high roll. Which he did. I can't blame him really for firing premium. He does have a Soma and an AT-15 that he was facing a moment ago. Soma's been taken out, but then the M2Y comes over the ridge to finish him off. But that ended up with a very good game. A little bummer that I got taken out with a last second shot before I disappeared behind cover. But I ended up acing it with the spotter ribbon and a patrol duty. As you can see here, we got the ace tanker. That's the spotter. And of course, fighter and fire for effect. And the patrol duty. I actually did my job as a light tank, and also, on top of that, did plenty of damage, which the damage, of course, gives you a very high rating. But I did over 2,000 assisted damage, as well as over 2,100 damage, which, for a Tier 8 game, that's pretty good for a Tier 6 light. But I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for watching.